welcome to yet another snowy Monday. Boy, it was a winter wonderland out there last night and into this morning, was it not? With the trees all covered with snow, your car with snow all over it, and the driveway, hopefully not as much as we had anticipated. Allister in his forecast this morning, Allister Aalders, our meteorologist, saying that the ground was warm when all this fell. Right? We had that big rain on Saturday, and some of the snow melted as it hit the ground, so the accumulations weren't as much. But I got to tell you, shoveling off the vehicle this morning, it was a good 15, 20 on my vehicle anyway. Now, windy, stuff blowing around. Don't know the actual numbers yet, but it's still coming. Looking out the window right now, we're still seeing flakes fly. The good news is the sun is coming back, but not until tomorrow afternoon. We're looking at highs around 0 tomorrow, so hopefully some of this stuff that fell is going to melt, and we're going to see a bit of a warm-up into the second half of the week. So I'm not sure how many of you are going to make the effort to actually clean the driveway or just let Mother Nature do it. So we will be speaking with Allister Aalders as part of the program today. In hour number 3, he's going to join us to give us those numbers we're looking for and what we can expect as the week rolls along here. Is it time to put that shovel away? It was just like a heartbreaker when we saw that snowfall on Saturday morning, right? And it kind of all melted, and then Sunday, here we go again, right? So not seeing anything major in the forecast, but forecasts change, and Allister will bring us up to date on that coming up in hour number 3 today. Of course, we're watching the tragic events at New York's LaGuardia Airport unfold. If you haven't heard already, an Air Canada flight that was landing at one of the busiest airports in the United States ran into a fire truck, and to 2 pilots that were flying that aircraft from Montreal to LaGuardia perished in the crash. There was something like 40 people that were injured and have been sent to hospital. Obviously, still early hours and early days into the investigation into that crash. We'll pass along any information that we learn from that. But just an absolute tragic start to the work week at New York's LaGuardia Airport. It's closed, as I understand, to be closed until about 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon, which is going to throw yet another wrench into the already strained American air market with delays at airports because of the TSA pay issue and the government shutdown. And now President Trump is deploying ICE agents to airports, and there's concern about what their role is going to be. And traveling in the United States has just been an absolute mess. And we're getting through those spring break seasons, right? March break ending here in Nova Scotia for the kids. They're back at school today. At least some of them are. Some schools are closed today, and some are on the old back road transportation plans. In HRCE, everything's open today. It's also the end of spring break or March break for politicians, both at the federal level in Ottawa and here in Nova Scotia, and at the municipal level, although municipal politicians will tell you they never really get a day off. But anyway, it's back to business. We know that the provincial legislature will resume today, and we'll be missing a pretty high-profile member in the Premier, who's traveling again outside of the province as we continue to debate the budget and some of the bills associated with it. Of course, the war in Iran continuing. We had an ultimatum over the weekend from President Trump to the Iranian government to open up the Strait of Hormuz in 48 hours, or he was going to start attacking energy infrastructure. There apparently were talks over the weekend, and the President of the United States, in all capital letters, by the way, today, putting out onto True Social that they had some good talks and that some progress was made, and he has extended that ultimatum now until, I think it's Friday, a 5-day extension, and that has got markets on the rise today. Holy smokes. The oil prices are in the absolute free fall right now. On news of that extension, Brent crude, the international benchmark, has dropped almost 10%. WTI has dropped almost 9%. Gasoline at New York is down 6.5%. So, if we follow the bouncing ball, and as we've seen with price increases, we saw another one on the weekend, hopefully we'll see decreases as quickly. Right now, gasoline at $1.74.4 a liter in Nova Scotia. It was $1.38.8 before the war started, 35.6 cents. Diesel, even worse, $2.40.3. It was $1.83.6. That's 56.7 cents a liter increase since the 28th of February. Hopefully, the decreases will be as quick and as large as the increases were. Well, it's Monday, folks. That means it's time for us, of course, to open up our telephone lines. It's time for Councillors on the Hot Seats. Weather tends to, we've had all kinds of trouble with Monday storms this year, right? And we've had councillors out of the studio more than in the studio during the winter, and that, of course, is the case again today. But we will carry on as we always do here on the show. Very pleased to welcome to the show today to take her seat on the hot seat, I guess is the way to describe that, from District Number 11. That's Spryfield Sambro Loop, and that is Patty Cuttell. Patty, how are you?
I'm well, Dan. Excited to be here on the hot seat on this cold day. And, you're talking about all the snow that we've had this winter. And, if we all remember last summer, we had a very, very long, hot, dry spell. And that was causing issues with water and groundwater and droughts. And, I know that the snow means shoveling and, disruption. It also means that we're replenishing the groundwater, which is really important for those of us that are on wells and also for our, rivers and wetlands and ecosystems. So there's a silver lining to all of this.
On the other side, or in the other corner, I guess, on the hot seat is all the way from District 13. That's Prospect Road in St. Margaret's, and that's Nancy Hartling. Nancy, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
There's lots of room on the hot seat, so we can carry on, right?
Yeah, the weather's actually, it looks like it's really improved. I don't know, I'm the forever optimist, I guess, and I choose to think about snow at this time of the year as more like a poor man's fertilizer as opposed to a problem. That's how I think about it.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the number. Of course, we are in that lull period now, councillors, that is between the last budget meeting and the final vote. I do believe that's scheduled for the 31st of this month, which is not that far away, but we're still obviously deep into the budget and deep into all of the numbers and such. And as I understand it, with our councillors last week, we're sitting somewhere around 9.5% increase in total tax bills. I'll start with you, Deputy Mayor Cuttell. I guess your thoughts on the process and where we're at today.
This was, my fifth year doing budget. And it's that sixth year. That's my sixth year, Dan. And, I have to say this was one of the best budget processes we've had to date. We spent a lot of time really digging into things, getting an understanding of, things, debt to service ratio, for example, and the implications of that on the future of HRM's financial situation. And, we had a lot of, robust discussions about things. We didn't all agree on everything, but that is the way that council goes. And we ended up with, an overall increase to the tax bill of 7.5%. There's a lot of challenges that we're facing. Our city has grown tremendously over the last few years. That puts a lot of pressure on increased demand for services and for infrastructure. And at the same time, we're facing an affordability crisis. And I know a lot of people are struggling. And so, it was very challenging striking the right balance between kind of meeting the increased demand while at the same time, trying to responsibly manage the budget.
Deputy Mayor, you said 7.5%. Our councillors last week said 9.5% because of the increase in transit. What's the number?
So if you look at your tax bill, there's a number of line items on that bill. you'll see that there's, the municipal tax rate. And then there's a number of other pieces like the mandatory education, supplemental funding, how the climate tax, or what we're calling the strategic climate and strategic infrastructure tax. So there's a number of items. So if you look at just the municipal portion, that is 9.5 is where we landed. But when you look at the bill as a whole with all the other pieces on there, it works out to be 7.5. Of course, until we get our documents next week at our final, budget meeting to ratify all of this, I still caution that. Yeah.
Your thoughts, Councillor Hartling?
Yeah, I think the deputy mayor pretty much said it all. Yeah, the municipal portion is 9.5. The overall tax increase on your tax bill is 7.5. But this is my second budget, and to the deputy mayor's point, we really left no stone unturned. It went on for weeks and weeks, and I think that we all learned a lot. I think that we all arrived at a great understanding of exactly how hard it is to lower, the tax increases. It takes about $8 million worth of cuts for us to knock a percentage point off the increase. So we did a decent amount of cutting to get us where we are. And as you already mentioned, I think the reason that it went up in the end was because of the addition of buses. But it's hard to argue that wasn't completely necessary. So it is what it is, I think is probably the best way to say it. We did our very, very, very best on this budget.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right to the phone lines. And we'll say hello this morning to Tim. Tim, how are you?
Morning, Dan. Morning, councillors.
Morning.
Good.
Morning. Well, certainly there's no shortage of municipal things to talk about, but I'll ask you about this. In regards to the Water Commission, I'm not sure if the new head of the Water Commission has come on the show to explain anything, but I'll go back to the breach of information and as it relates to customers' personal information, if there's any update, because I believe there's 3 or 4 councillors that sit on the Water Commission, and somebody must know something, but for some reason everybody's being extremely quiet. So when you have the potential to lose your identity, that creates a concern for all of us, and I'd just like to know if there's any update from either councillor.
I do sit on the Water Commission. I'm a water commissioner. I don't have an update that anything more than what's already being made publicly available. And I would say that that what's being shared is kind of the important information, and that I know they're making efforts to contact people who may have been affected. So, at this point, that's the information that's out there. Is that all that I have to share right now?
Councillor Hartling, you heard anything?
No, I can't say too much beyond what's already been said there. I actually don't sit on the Water Commission, but from just based off of what I understand, Patty, it was actually a third-party service provider that was doing the work there. Yeah. 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 I mean, when it comes to privacy and information breaches, I think it's, we just need to be cautious about what we do share publicly and don't share, because we just need to be, we don't want to make any situation worse. So Halifax Water is really the lead on this. And if you have a specific concern, you can call them, but, they are managing this. They're taking it very seriously. And they're following proper procedure and course on responding.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Councillors on the Hot Seat will continue after this break. Welcome back. It is Councillors on the Hot Seats. The telephone number is 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right back to the telephone lines and say hello to Lewis. Lewis, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Todd. How about yourself?
I am well. What's your question for the councillors, please?
The bus service, I hear an awful lot of talk about that. I travel around HRM a lot. I drive for a job, you know. I pass an awful lot of buses, 3 or 4 of them on Spring Garden Road at a time, 1 or 2 people in the bus. That's an awful waste of money. What do the councillors got to say about that? I mean, they talk about putting more buses on the road. The buses I see on the road now are empty, virtually empty, with 2 people in a bus. There's one in my a new route that they put in my son's area out in Sackville, and it comes down his street 3 or 4 times a day. There might be 1 person in the bus. Most of the time, the bus is empty. What's the thinking behind something like that?
Thanks, Lewis. I'll start with you, Deputy Mayor Cuttell.
Oh, thank you, Dan. So, one of the great things we have now gets presented at the Transportation Standing Committee are quarterly, what we call KPI reports, so, key performance indicators. And if you look at those reports, one of the things they measure is boarding, on-time performance, overloading. So, there's different areas of the city which have different experiences in terms of passengers on the bus. If we take Spryfield, for example, this is an area where I have a lot of overloading issues, meaning that I have more people wanting to get on the bus than there are places on the bus, right? So, in areas where we see overloading issues, that is where we're looking to add buses because there's a big demand for that service. In other places, and I don't have the KPIs off the top of my head for that Sackville route, but it's different times a day. You'll find that there's a different level of ridership. But overall, if a transit system is going to work, it needs to be able to offer service to people throughout the day. Otherwise, it's not just having peak hour service isn't going to work for everybody. So sometimes you'll see a lot of people on the bus, and sometimes you'll see maybe not so many people on the bus. But overall, it's rather than, it's providing a service that rather than having people get in their car for every trip, there's an alternative. And our goal is to continue to build the ridership on transit. As has been noted on this show and in a lot of emails I get from residents, congestion is a real issue in our city right now and a growing issue. And as we see more homes built and more apartments built, that problem is only going to get worse. And unless we have an alternative choice for people in terms of how they move around the city, we're going to end up with gridlock, and that's not useful either. So, transit, it's a tricky business. It's a complicated business, particularly around routing, and we're making some changes. We have a new core service model that's being implemented this year, which includes some changes to routes as well as some additional buses. So it's a constant tweaking and making improvements.
Councillor Hartling?
Yeah, I think that the deputy mayor pretty much said it all. To the deputy mayor's point, the core service plan that was pretty much just released, and they're working on implementing in part with the new buses, which will come online hopefully sometime this year. They are working towards, realigning routes where they get the most ridership. That has always been the goal of Halifax Transit, is to, work on strategies to get the most people in the most buses. The other thing that I'm wondering, and I don't know that this is true, by the way, Lewis, but I'm just wondering whether you are happening to look at people in the buses at a moment in time where it's at the beginning or end of a route, right? So, you would expect the ridership to be the greatest in the middle. If the first stop in Sackville obviously wouldn't carry all the riders that it would throughout the length of the route. But I honestly don't know.
Yeah, well, this was a new area that was recently put in place out in Millwood. There was never a bus that went down his street in Millwood, but it started about a year ago. And I go out and visit him. We'll sit on his front steps or something for half an hour, and I'll see 3 buses go up or down the street. and it's virtually empty or there's one person on it. It seems like an awful waste of money to me to run a bus up and down the street. It's just a driver sitting in there driving around. An awful waste of money.
Well, I'm sure Nancy and I can bring this up with the local area councillor and kind of discuss what the plans are for that route. I mean, if it is a new route, we also know it takes time to build ridership, because it's a big shift for people to, think about taking transit instead of their car. And, it is an ongoing effort.
Thanks, Lewis. I appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let us say hello now to Peter. Peter, how are you?
Good morning, folks. I've got a quick question for you, and it's basically not just becoming for me, it'll be everybody in HRM, and it's in regards to the new development plan over by the Micmac Mall. And the application is in front of you folks now, and my understanding is they want to put in up to 8,000 units in that small area. So 8,000 units would probably be a minimum of 16,000 people. And for perspective, that would be 4 populations the size of the town of Port Hawkesbury moving into that area. And what the residents, myself and the residents of HRM would like to know is, what's the traffic plan? What's the policing plan? What's the fire suppression plan? How does the city and Halifax Water plan on having a septic and water delivery to those new 8,000 units, and schooling and healthcare, among other things? And my understanding is, obviously those plans haven't come out yet, but when they do come out, I can't imagine putting another 8,000 vehicles in that area at peak traffic times without a highly comprehensive traffic plan. And the city has a really bad habit of approving apartments being built without traffic plans consistent with them. So maybe you guys can explain to everybody in HRM how you plan on dealing with that amount of people. Because, for example, Port Hawkesbury with 4,000 people has its own mayor, council, fire, policing, all of that. And how do you guys plan on providing that for another 16,000 people?
Thanks, Peter. We'll start with you, Councillor Hartling.
Yeah, what can I say? I feel like Councillor Austin spoke really well about this last week. But I would recommend, first off, speak to Councillor Austin. There are a few things in there that I would highlight first. The issue about how, like, the hospitals and the schools and all the other services, those aren't, necessarily part of our definition of what, how we approve. We aren't allowed to consider those things as part of the development process. But it did absolutely meet the requirements. It's also a great place for development generally, as I understand that had been understood as like an opportune place to put increased density. Is there anything in, like, I'm kind of struggling a bit on the exact question. Is there a transportation plan? Yes. Is there, all the things associated with what it takes to get to that kind of development have been considered, for sure.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I had a bit of a different take on this development. I certainly did have concerns. I just want to correct a couple of things. I believe it was about 4,000 to 5,000 units, which we're looking at a total of 8,000 to 10,000 people in total. And, there's a number of towers. I mean, where the development is going, I don't have an issue with. I do think that, when we have opportunities like redeveloping empty parking lot into, communities, I mean, that's always a great opportunity because you're building on existing services. Halifax Water, noted at this point, as that gets developed, they'll look at servicing upgrades that need to happen to accommodate it. So that's something that happens in lockstep with development. Obviously you can't build the units unless you have the capacity, and that wasn't noted as an issue. And the developer would be putting in the upgrades to be able to accommodate those units. My concern that I rose during that discussion at council was about parkland, and you have that amount, that number of people, that many of units. And I think the parkland dedication to HRM is just a couple of hectares, which includes like 2 tennis courts and a basketball court. And, when you think about Port Hawkesbury, you think about a Truro, that's not enough recreational asset to accommodate that number of people. I think the impact that it will have on the surrounding parks, I think that was a concern as well. Also noted during those discussions was the impact on the interchange there about getting on the highway. The highway is right there, which means there is access, but with that increase in volume, certainly we'll have to look at that access point. So whenever you increase a population in a particular area of town to that extent, I think there are a lot of other considerations that need to be accounted for. And we talked about schools, but that's the provincial decision. We know the province has been very proactive in driving Halifax to approve more housing. And and that has been happening. There is the goal to double the city's population. With that will come the need for more hospitals. It will come the need for more schools. So those are things that the province needs to take responsibility for and figuring out where those kids go. I also think about we need more ball fields and soccer fields and community centers. Those are expensive municipal assets, and we have to find a better way of funding those because just getting a small parcel of parkland with 2 tennis courts and a basketball court, I'm not even sure it's a full-size basketball court, just isn't adequate. So those are things I'll be continuing to look for.
Thanks, Peter. We're up against the break. Councillors on the Hot Seat is going to continue on the other side of the news. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. This is Councillors on the Hot Seats. Lots of lines open, folks. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. On the Hot Seat, Deputy Mayor and Councillor for District 11. That is Patty Cuttell. And Councillor for District 13. That's Nancy Hartling. Again, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We'll go right back to the phones and say hello to Chris. Chris, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dan?
I am well. What's your question for the councillors, please?
Well, I have a question and then a couple of comments, if I could have the time.
Sure.
We don't all agree on the way that our property taxes are calculated, but I think there's one thing that all of us can agree on, and I'd like your comment as to whether you agree with this or not. But I think we'd all agree that it's fair for everyone to pay for the services provided by the municipality to their district. Would you not agree with that?
Councillors?
I think that's a complicated. I perhaps you need to explain a bit more about what you mean.
Okay, the services
by their district.
Okay, the services that I receive as a taxpayer in my district cost X number of dollars. Is it not fair to say that I should pay for those services?
I think I have an issue about using districts as the way
No, please.
The cost of services, because if you look at my district, last term it went from Spryfield to West Dover. It covered a tremendous amount of area, and within that district, I have properties that are within the service boundary that receive water and sewer and transit.
Yeah, no.
And then I have a large rural area that doesn't have any of those services, and that is very rural by nature. So you need to look at things through kind of a geographical typology rather than district boundaries, which are a bit arbitrary.
Okay, no, excuse me. You're not understanding the question. I'm not saying what types of services each district is served with. I'm saying the cost of those services. It could be one service or it could be 20 services. If I am receiving services from HRM to the tune of X number of dollars, is it not fair for me to pay X number of dollars to pay for those services that I am receiving? Is it fair or not? That's a simple question. Either yes or no.
Again, I think people pay, like if you're getting water and sewer, you're paying for water and sewer. If you're getting transit, you're paying for transit. So
right.
I think you asked me if districts should pay for the services they receive, and I said I don't think that's a good way of calculating that.
Why?
Well, I just explained it, that, you have a district like mine, that, if you take my district from last term, it was huge. And so what you're doing is you're combining areas that are urban with areas that are rural. Now, district boundaries are determined on population, not necessarily on services received.
Yeah, you're still not getting it. Anyway, I'll move on from that. My district is District 7.
I get it.
And no, I know you don't. And I have a report in front of me that's compiled using for the years 23 and 24 that shows that my District 7 paid in 23-24 $86 million more than the cost of services provided to my district. And there are a few other districts that pay well into the millions of dollars more, but there's most of the districts run a deficit. You guys do not collect enough taxes from the district, yours included, both your councillors. You don't collect enough taxes to pay for the services that are provided. So that means people like me and a few of the other districts, we are subsidizing the districts that aren't paying enough taxes. That is not fair. It's fair to pay for the services that I receive, but is it fair for me to eat hamburger and hot dogs so that the shopper behind me can live on steak? I don't agree with that. And the people in my district, and I'm sure the other districts, when they find out about all this, they're not going to agree with it either. So the simple answer is it not fair? Should people pay the cost of running their district? If I receive a service and it costs $1, should I get it for $1, or should I only have to pay 50 cents?
Yeah. So again, I think again, I think we got to break this out a bit more, right? And I don't think districts are the units that necessarily reflect, revenue and expenses. So we know we have a city, right? And we know the city needs to have a central business district, and we know it needs to have an industrial park, and it has commercial lands, and we have those things in Halifax. We have Burnside, for example, which generates a tremendous amount of revenue through commercial property taxes, as does the central business district. And then we have, people living in those areas, which are fortunate, when you look at the revenue per district, that are benefiting from that. But we can't have the entire workforce and the entire city living in your district, right? So we all contribute to, a healthy downtown, a healthy central business district. We all contribute and approve of and support, the development of industrial lands in the city. And we do that by zoning. And those things don't happen everywhere. They can't. It doesn't make sense to do that. So that's why I'm saying you have to look at things in terms of geographic typology and not district. Districts are based on kind of population count. They're not necessarily based on services or on revenue. And, there's many different ways to kind of split this up and take a look at it. Remove all commercial and just look at residential taxes. Look at the services that different areas get or might not get. For example, there's no bus that goes around the Sambro loop. They don't have a recreation center. They don't actually have they don't have water and sewer. They don't have a library. So I think you have to look at things within the urban service boundary, and we know that denser development, generates, it's more efficient to service. But then you got to look at the services that actually happen outside the service boundary and what are people actually getting. And even with the suburban development, you can take suburban development on large lots and very sprawled out, or you can, look at something like in Spryfield, for example, where we have a lot of townhomes and semis and kind of, denser family homes. And that is generating revenue that's covering costs. So, we got to keep working toward a more cost-effective way of developing, and I think that is something that we're doing. You have Micmac Mall was a good example that was raised in this conversation, and so I think your perspective's a little simplistic.
Nancy, your thoughts?
Yeah. So, first of all, I agree with everything that the mayor or the deputy mayor just said. Just to further that point, talking about like Burnside and like commercial property taxes, I think about 3 times what residential tax is. So that makes a very big difference in terms of the weighting and of what a district collects in terms of, overall revenues. So that's just another piece to consider, right? Like that's a big piece of the puzzle there.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. We're up against the break. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after these messages. Welcome back. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues. On the line with us today, Councillor and, of course, Deputy Mayor for District 11. That's Patty Cuttell, and Councillor for District 13, Nancy Hartling. Back to the phone lines, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Gloria to the show. Gloria, how are you?
I'm well, Dan. Thank you. Happy spring morning, councillors.
Well,
Did you make it
Gloria.
snow, Gloria? Is it your fault?
No, not my fault. Anyway, my question to the councillors, is it a fact that you're cutting arts, music, and library services from the schools? And what is the cost of that?
We don't have the numbers on that yet. That's still an active negotiation.
So you haven't decided whether you're cutting that?
No.
Because that's not what I'm reading in the, from the residents. I've had calls saying that it's a fact it's being cut. So you haven't even considered that?
Oh, no, it's on the table. It's on,
What's the cost?
There's
the cost? So, if it's on the table, what's the cost?
So, hold on. I think last year, I'll pull up the exact numbers for you here, Gloria. Hold on just 1 second.
Okay.
That's crazy. That's the one thing that I don't actually have right in front of me, and apologies for that.
Oh, I thought you'd have that in your head since it's such a controversial thing.
I can say, sorry to butt in, but I can say that we've spoken with some librarians who seem to think that this is moving forward and it's going to cost like 75 jobs.
Yeah, so the supplementary funding agreement for Halifax Regional Art for 25-26 was $13,519,200. Built into the Halifax Charter, we are not able to cut it any further than 10% year over year. But right. the status of that negotiation is ongoing.
Yeah, I remember that when I was on council when we added that arts and music and how popular it was.
It's a great program, and I'm so glad that you did. I as a program, I think it's fantastic. I really do, and it was very forward-thinking.
Not cutting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you're not going to cut it.
I think, Gloria, I think the discussion is that, when you added that, many years ago, the funding was for enhanced music and art. And over the years, that began to expand, where in 2019, there were 62 support staff for music and art, and there was 123 staff for other enhancements. That included early childhood educators, additional teachers, resource teachers, program assistants, library specialists, and social workers. And I think the question became what is supplementary funding for, and what is it being spent on, and what should be the core service of HRCE in the Department of Education, and what should be the benefit? What should the supplemental funding collected by HRM be spent on? So, since 2019, and I get that would have come out just before I got on council. We started to ask questions, and there wasn't a lot of oversight on how this money was being spent prior to that. And so I think it's incumbent upon us.
Well, there was when we put it in because
take a look and say, wait a second here.
Yeah. What
was this originally intended for? And now what is it being used for? And since then, HRCE has stopped using that to fund additional teachers or resource teachers, because those are core HRCE services. And the librarians, if we're decreasing that supplemental fund by 10%, kind of start to right size it for the arts and music, and HRCE decides that it's the librarians they don't wish to fund anymore. The HRCE can fund librarians. So, we don't know what the end of this negotiation is going to be, but I do think that when you're collecting tax dollars, and I'm sure you appreciate this, Gloria, you're collecting tax dollars, you do have to take a look at and say, well, what is the value we're getting for this? How did this relate to the original?
Well, I think if you ask the students, they will tell you what the value is if you ask the students. My other question is, you're thinking of
no question about the value of librarians. There's zero question about that. It's just
you're thinking of cutting. That's on the table. What about the green bin? The pickup for the green bin for the weekly pickup. What's the cost of that? And are you cutting that?
No, I can speak to that. No, we opted to not cut the weekly green bin in the summer.
What's the cost? What's the cost?
It was roughly, I think it was around $400,000. Is that right? It's right around that amount to do for the additional green bin pickup throughout the summer. I believe it's right around there. But we opted not.
I just want to say, I would think that you would look to cut that. All you have to do is.
We had done it. We did do it the year before. Certainly
but you didn't cut it out entirely. You shortened the time. You didn't cut it out.
No. Normally your green bin gets picked up every 2 weeks. During the summer, it goes to weekly, and that's because of wildlife. To be honest with you, and
it didn't, and we survived fine. We didn't have a problem, but I just want to say, I think you better start looking at things like green bin and other things before you take these services away from the students. Some students who rely so much on these extra services that we were able to provide.
Yeah, and it was incredibly forward thinking, and I'm glad that we have it. I really am. I think just the question on the table is that what out of all of these things that this funding is currently accounting for, which of it belongs with HRCE and which of it?
We're getting tired of hearing that. When we were City of Dartmouth, we even funded the hospitals. We didn't question, was that province or was that us? And that's the way you should be looking at these things. Give them a little more for their tax dollar than what they're getting.
You know what? I wish. That would be great. On one hand, you're saying we can't keep increasing taxes. We need to focus on our core services. On the other thing, it's fund healthcare. We're struggling to pay for our core services. We need to invest in transit. We need to invest in infrastructure to support the growing municipality. We have to look at what we're collecting and what we're delivering. And it is about collaboration with other orders of government, 100%. But we need to have that dialogue so that it's making sense for taxpayers. Taxpayers are already paying for health care through income tax.
We're going to have to leave it there, folks. We're out of time. Gloria, I appreciate the call as always. Councillor
Thank you, Gloria.
Hartling, I appreciate your time today as along with you, Deputy Mayor Cuttell. We'll chat soon.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
That's
Have a great day.
That's another edition of Councillors on the Hot Seat. We're going to take a break. We're going to get an update on the news, and on the other side of it, we're going to open up the telephone lines for the first open hour of the week, the Manic Monday open hour. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Your thoughts after the news. Welcome back to the Monday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Very glad you're able to spend some time with us. It's time now for the Manic Monday open hour. Your chance to get stuff off your chest, maybe something you heard during our last segment, maybe something you read or heard on the weekend that you want to bring to our attention, or maybe something completely different. That's the beauty of open hours. Regular rules apply. You can bring anything to the table here. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. If you were watching the news on the weekend and you maybe went to the gas station this morning, you saw that we saw yet another interrupter clause here in Nova Scotia over the weekend on Saturday, that raising gasoline prices. It's $1.74.4 now. Diesel prices are $2.40, $2.40.3 to be exact. Discussions over the weekend in my household about we're getting into the end of winter. At least it was looking like that before the snow came. Discussions around my place on the weekend about summertime and summertime plans. And with the world in the state that it is, with the ongoing war in Iran and some of the travel troubles that we're seeing in the United States with the TSA and the government shutdown, and traveling, getting into a little bit of chaos. The discussion, at least in my circle, was perhaps sticking around and spending time here in Canada, or maybe even closer to home. I thought about a plan to maybe take a weekend or two and maybe head up to Cape Breton for a weekend, or down to the South Shore for the weekend, or even just having a staycation here in HRM, and started to work the numbers on that here, particularly with the staycation, because that's the easy one, right? That's just, getting a hotel room for a couple nights and being a tourist in your city. Haven't done that for many, many years, and I think it would be fun. But my goodness, is the cost of vacationing ever getting expensive? Have you looked at the price or the availability, but more along the lines of the price of a hotel room in downtown Halifax lately? I was looking around just before the long weekend in May. I know that after the long weekend in May, prices tend to go up because we're quote unquote into tourist season. And the cost of a hotel room was north of $300 a night. Now, if you factor in the cost of getting somewhere at $1.74 a liter, right? That's 35.5 cents more than it was at this time last month. With hotel rooms costing north of $300, and I will suggest that in the summertime it'll be closer to $400 here in HRM. And a tank of gasoline, at least my vehicle, I know that everybody has different size tanks, but a gas tank at least 100 and a quarter. Mine's probably going to be closer to 150. I'm curious if you're planning on changing your summer vacation plans. There's a lot of external factors that are at play here. Some of us have decided that we weren't going to travel to the United States. I wonder if that is still something that is on your mind. And that's just the political situation between our two countries, not to mention all of the things I talked about earlier with regards to the actual act of traveling. It's extremely expensive to fly these days. I would imagine that it's getting more and more expensive. I heard a story of a major American airline that said that they're planning for $175 a barrel, and are urging this kind of feels more like a marketing ploy, but they're urging their customers to book early because they're looking at expensive fuel, and we've seen it before where airlines have tacked fuel surcharges on. Are you planning to vacation this summer? And if you are you going to travel, or are you going to stay close to home? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. There's that. There's all kinds of things to talk about. Again, I said it off the top. Regular rules apply. You can bring whatever it is to the table. We go to the phones and we say hello to Mike. Mike, how are you?
Not today. How are you doing?
I am well. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, I was going to ask the councillors a couple of questions, but apparently it's a little late. One of the things I wanted to discuss was bike lanes. Mm-hmm. I've heard a lot of talk about it, most of it negative, and I've heard prices about it, but I haven't heard what the cost of maintaining these bike lanes is.
You're talking like wintertime maintenance, summertime maintenance, both?
Well, all year round, they have to keep them clean. If they get potholes, they have to fix those. They have to plow them. They have to salt them.
Right.
I haven't heard anything about what that's going to cost us.
I'm sure that number's out there, but I don't have it off the top of my head, Mike.
Okay, and the other question I have is I recently received a letter from Halifax Water saying that they want to come in and inspect the outflow of my house.
Okay.
And if I don't phone them and make an appointment, they will force me to get an outside contractor to come in and do it at my own expense.
Did they say why they want to take a look at it?
No, just that they want to do it, and if they don't like it, then if it doesn't meet their standards, then I will have to hire an outside contractor to make changes, whatever they say.
So you live in a rural area, Mike?
Yes, I do. I live in Lake Loon.
Okay, so are you on septic or Halifax Water?
I'm on Halifax Water.
Right. So they're concerned that you're not meeting their specs.
Well, let me put it to you this way.
Right.
If the bylaws are changed for building construction, any building that was built before that is
grandfathered
in.
Right.
So why all of a sudden are they changing? Is it because they haven't spent the money to upgrade their system and now they want me to upgrade mine so they don't have to?
Interesting. I'll have to see if anybody out there knows the reason why. Mike, I appreciate the call.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. If you were listening to our segment previous, Councillors on the Hot Seat, the question about Halifax Water and this data breach was raised, and Councillor and Deputy Mayor Patty Cuttell, who sits on the Water Commission, didn't have a whole lot of additional information to pass along with regards to that breach. It's been several weeks now, and I get that these are immense when it comes to trying to get all the facts and figures and how deep this thing went and who's responsible and how to fix it and how to prevent it from happening again. But we know what these can lead to. And I understand that Halifax Water has said that no financial statements or no financial data was at risk on this. But I think that Nova Scotians, I think that Halifax Water customers have the right to know exactly what happened and what was at stake and what the remedy is and if we should be worried. Hasn't been a whole lot of communication on this other than to say, there's nothing new. We here at the program have reached out a couple of times to Halifax Water to try and get new information, which they say there is none to pass along. So I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt because of the mammoth amount of information that would be under investigation here. But as each day kind of ticks along, the concern level, for at least for me, starts to raise a little bit more. I wonder if it does for you. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. Phone lines are open, folks. If you want to join the conversation, perfect time to do so. And we're back after these messages. Monday open hour, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right to the phones and say hello to Robbie. Robbie, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind today?
Just one sec. I'll take you off speaker.
Sure.
What's on my mind is this government.
Okay.
With the cuts in that, they can't think outside the box. The thing is, there's other ways to make money than just to cut public services. Like, for instance, Sobeys gets leases for their liquor stores and cannabis distributions. Why can't we make that private and keep a small amount for the province, put out licenses for liquor sales and cannabis sales, and start doing it that way? Because the same way it haven't worked for years, and they got a monopoly there. They can make money off it. Instead of paying all the overhead, such as rentals, internet, whatever you need to run a store, privatize it, sell licenses out. I'm sure there's businesses that like to jump on that opportunity, and plus they'll be making money. You know.
Right, and that's not unheard of either. There are many provinces across the country. That's the way they do it.
British Columbia,
Ontario.
Alberta, Ontario.
Yep.
Costco sells it in other provinces.
Yep. You can buy wine and beer at some grocery stores in New Brunswick, right?
Yeah, but like I'm just referring to British Columbia, for instance. They used to have a high deficit one time, and what they did was privatize everything. That was about 25 years ago. I'm 52, and I can remember that.
Right.
And ever since that, they've been making money on that, right? It was more of a step forward for them to make money instead of putting up the cost, for these establishments.
I think that it's something that should be in the hopper, and Robbie, I appreciate the call. I hear the argument, the counter argument to it is that we're going to put pressure onto corner stores and to the employees to check IDs, but really, and there's always an exception to the rule, but really we've already been doing that with cigarettes, and we've been doing it for years, right? So, does it increase the revenue? The government's still going to get their own, right? They're going to get their piece, no matter where it's sold. And if it's not sold in an NSLC outlet, then that piece is still going to happen. And it gives access to more people, more convenient access to more people. The converse of that, Robbie, is that, NSLC has good paying jobs, and we may eliminate those. So I get it. Time to start thinking outside the box for additional revenue. And I appreciate the call, my friend. As always, just to set the record straight, British Columbia, to Robbie's point of privatizing everything, didn't have a good year last year. Their budget this year, $13.3 billion in deficit. So they're facing the financial crunch very much like Nova Scotia is. But I do appreciate the call. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Bill.
Hello. How are you doing this morning?
I'm well, sir. What's on your mind?
It's the bridge tolls,
okay.
And the reason why they took the bridge tolls off was because of administration and upkeep of the bridge, and it wasn't evening out for profit, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and that's some of the reason they took tolls off. But now that they're cutting all these services, to the people and stuff, I just wonder if they wouldn't approach that different, and all the layoffs and everything they could have done right around the Bridge Commission and try to get, say it was $1.25 to get across the bridge, and 75 cents of that went to the bridge itself. It didn't go to the coffers for maintenance and stuff, right? If they could have got together and went into that and cut all the fat and everything out of that. So it would have backed that off to maybe gain another quarter a car from the layoffs they made. And then, the way things are, add another 25 cents to the toll, so it would have cost $1.50 to get across. And I think that would have added up to millions. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but I just think there was a cash cow there for the coffers, so they wouldn't be in there now taking out government services.
Well, Bill, I do know that when we were talking about this, when the government proposed this cut, that about $40 million a year of that money was going towards maintenance on both spans of the bridge, and that's now moving directly out of government coffers, right? And then they've also absorbed Halifax Harbour Bridges as a corporation to become a Crown corporation, so those people are going to be government employees. But the Premier told us when he was on the show here a couple weeks ago, he said that they eliminated those tolls because it was essentially a tax on commuters. But I think the after effects is something that was the unintended consequences, perhaps. We've seen an increase in traffic coming across the bridge, which is leading to congestion, and now the government is looking for sources of revenue that they already had, right?
Yes, and I'm just thinking it was like an election promise to get the guy elected. He really didn't need to make that promise there because you're going to get elected anyway.
Right.
But I'm just thinking that it was just something like New Brunswick now is trying to reduce their deficit by putting a toll on the Cobequid Pass for everybody from Nova Scotia.
Right.
And they project like $14 or $15 million that's going to go to them to reduce the deficit. And I'm just wondering why they couldn't rework the formula for the bridges so there would have been more money going to the government to, reduce. It just seems like they cut out a source of revenue there, to me, anyway.
I agree with you, Bill. Appreciate the call, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That New Brunswick toll not sitting well with people that live on the Nova Scotia side of the border. Some of them commute every day and are going to have to pay that toll to just to go to work. Some use the hospitals in Moncton. They're much closer than they are here in Halifax, and that's going to cost them money. The Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association concerned always when there's additional tolls being put on highways for truck traffic. We know that a lot of our part of the world's goods come right through here, through our two container terminals, and those are all going to be subject to a New Brunswick tax when they cross the border. Still have not heard a good answer as to why that toll booth was placed or is to be placed on our border as opposed to the border with Maine, and have not seen the legislation, this federal legislation that the New Brunswick finance minister was talking about that prevents New Brunswickers from tolling the highway with Quebec. Be interested to see once this thing, it's in the budget, that's for sure, but the infrastructure still has to be built. I understand that the toll's not going to Cobequid, it's going in at the Allac, where the big stop is there that everybody goes to. And the highway turns up towards goes up New Brunswick towards PEI. So anyway, we'll keep our eye on that, and we'll see what it means moving forward. Very quickly before the break, couple of emails. We were talking to our first caller about Halifax Water, and as always, our wealth of knowledge out there has some answers. This comes to us from a 31-year vet at Halifax Water, and it reads that Halifax Water is cutting off inflow from groundwater to the sewer system. Some people have cross connections with groundwater that enters the sewer system that are making people get rid of those cross connections. He goes on to write that the program has been ongoing for a few years now. Every home, about 98,000 of them, get a site visit, and they do a smoke test on the sewer pipes and the stormwater pipes to see if the stormwater enters those pipes, which costs a fair amount more to treat, and it also creates more flow needlessly into the sewer system. And the author says, I hope that helps. So I passed it along. Time for us to take a break for the news. On the other side of it, the open hour continues. Their lines are wide open, folks, if you want to get onto the show. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We are back after the update. Continues. Lots of lines open if you want to get into the conversation. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Those are the numbers. And very quickly to the email bag before we go to the phone lines. Carlos writes, you stated today that the bridge toll removal has caused increased congestion. Curious, he says, has there been data released to back up your claim? If so, could you please advise where it's posted? If not, on what source is your claim based? Conversation with Halifax Harbour Bridges on the air, where they said that there's been an increase of 10%. Also, there's a bunch of articles. There's one I just off the top of the Google, one in the Chronicle Herald, another in the Halifax Examiner. So the information is out there. And Carl, I appreciate the email. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let us say hello to David. David, how are you?
Yeah, good, Dan. Thank you. I enjoyed hearing Nikki Jabor on the air with you last week.
As did I. It was fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun for sure. Yeah, I sort of grow some stuff in containers on the back of my porch, and I just find that it's very productive and worthwhile and all that stuff. And I don't even really have like a great situation. Like I might get 3 to 4 hours of sunlight a day, yet I'd grow a couple cherry tomato plants, and those actually do really well. They turn into like big monsters, and between those two plants during the peak of production, I probably get like at least 6 cherry tomatoes a day, which is, just awesome. But, I also, as per her advice, grow lettuce and herbs and things like that, because I find those are sort of, at least for the sort of, local quality greens and stuff, the most expensive to buy in the grocery store. Herbs as well, but they're actually very easy to grow, like parsley, sage. God, you can't get rid of sage, thyme, all that kind of stuff. And so I just I just thought I'd share my thoughts. I don't really know too much about gardening. I'm not that experienced. Probably if you're beginning with it, just the best thing to do is just buy like the Miracle Grow potting soil mix and just use it according to the instructions and fertilize regularly. And it is just important to remember that you do need to fertilize that stuff because it's not actually dirt. There's not really any nutrients in it. The nutrients come from the things that they add to it, but also that just by the nature of the stuff that's that it's made of, it actually absorbs nutrients. So if you don't fertilize regularly, then you will have problems. But the other thing too, I found like the store mixes, you'll see like the potting soil mix at Sobeys or Superstore, that stuff doesn't really work very well and it's really low quality. And I think mostly it goes back to that sort of nutrients issue where, to be cheaper, they don't put as much sort of time-release fertilizer in it and stuff like that. So you'll sort of run into problems and, maybe not understand why your stuff is growing. And then the other mistake I see too, and I've sort of made myself, is thinking like, oh, okay, potting soil, I want to be organic. I'm going to mix in some manure or some dirt and stuff like that. But it, again, doesn't really work because those sort of potting soils are formulated. So if you mix in sort of, the compost and stuff like that, it just becomes too heavy and too wet and also doesn't do very well. But just basically I'd say just get your buckets, get the Miracle Grow potting soil, buy the chemical fertilizer, and just get your seedlings from Halifax Seed or Sobeys or something like that. You'll probably have a lot of success. And then as you get better, then you can kind of experiment with different soil types, sort of producing your own soil and all that kind of stuff. But it's a lot of fun and definitely worth it from what I've experienced. So
all right, David, appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I, too, have had experience with container gardening in buckets. I had gone the organic route, and I can say that it works. But you need to have a conversation with and I'm not certainly a green thumb by any means, but you need to have a conversation with somebody who is, and I do that through Nikki, of course, but also the good folks across the way here at Halifax Seed. They'll give you not only the right ideas for soils and for fertilizers if you go the chemical route or the organic route or the fish fertilizer or whatever it is you're going to use, but they'll also steer you in the right direction for the right type of seed to get, because there are different varieties that are built for different conditions, and there are actual seeds, particularly with tomatoes, that are designed for container growing. So there's just that. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Dave.
Yes, what a lovely spring day we got out there today.
And makes me feel like gardening.
So true. We can't wait, but we're going to have to wait a little longer. But I just wanted to touch on the travel, which you had brought up. Great topic, because my wife and I were looking to maybe slip off to PEI for a winter when the weather was not bad. And we looked at the price of hotel up there and the cost of everything else. We just thought this is just outrageous, really, for us. We're on a kind of a fixed income, but we could afford it if we had to pull it off. But we just thought, no, better money spent some other place. And I think you were bringing up hotel costs here in Halifax, same sort of thing, right? $300 is not unusual for a night out at a hotel, one night.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that includes an international breakfast or just a breakfast down in the lobby. Sometimes I can grab those off sometimes, but I'm curious with the Yarmouth Ferry to Bar Harbor. What is that going to be like this summer with the American travelers?
Yep.
Their liter of gas is still cheaper, like they go by the American gallon, but I can break it down if you like. And even though things are pressure down there with the cost of fuel, it's not like we have up here. And of course, we're hit with a lot of tax on our liter. 40%, I think, goes to taxes up here. So they're not as bad, but I don't know if you're going to see American folks coming up here as much. It was down 19%, I think, last year from 2024 because of the way that we're taking on the Americans as far as, I guess, in a way, a boycott, a protest. You could say that, right? And I think you had a fellow on from Maine last week. I think one of your regular, and they're hurting down in Maine. Mm-hmm. And they're hurting down in Maine because they rely on the Canadians, and we aren't going down there. So,
we are not.
And our dollar is, I think, sitting at $1.37. So 72 cents, something like that. So you're going to pay a difference down there. Things may be a little bit cheaper down there, but this Yarmouth Ferry, and I don't think Americans are cozy to coming up here either, because we all know what's going on between the issues of the border, and Trump sort of kicked this all off, and we're not letting that go. And just affordability-wise, and we need the American greenback up here more than anything else, folks. We really do. You want outside money coming into our country. Does that not make sense, Dan? So I don't know. I'm very curious to see that Yarmouth Bar Harbor Ferry, which is a losing proposition anyways, and nothing to take away from Yarmouth. I know they need the business, and so do we. But I'm going to keep my eye on that and see how well we do with the travelers from the south coming up here this summer. Just because of cost of, like you said, I mean, it's difficult everywhere. And I just heard that Air Canada flight in LaGuardia Airport, my goodness, I mean, if that doesn't, and you're right, traveling is not as easy as it used to be.
No.
I mean, there seems everything, maybe we just get the negative news, Dan, and it's like you have lineups here and the TSA down there is, difficult situation. So, it's not a great time for travel, I suppose, but anyways, I'm curious about the Yarmouth to Bar Harbor Ferry and how that all works out.
Appreciate it, Dave.
Cheers, Dan.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I don't know. I don't work in the travel industry, and I certainly am not an economist. But I think that we're seeing in our part of the world, Dave, to Dave's point about Prince Edward Island, and to my very limited research that I did this past weekend on hotel prices here in Halifax, I think that the tourism industry is banking very heavily on American visits and international visits. If you think of an American coming north of the border, put geopolitical stuff aside, right, they're already at a premium because their dollar is worth more than ours. So a $300 a night hotel room isn't $300 a night in American funds, right? And if you factor the conversion and those kind of things in, I think there'll be two indicators for me. One will be the Yarmouth Ferry, if we see a rebound down there, and the cruise ship season, which is getting ready to get underway here as well. We know we have record-setting seasons on record-setting seasons, and a lot of people traveled last year. I'm wondering if the same thing's going to happen this year, and I wonder if that's going to impact that industry with the high cost of fuel at this point, because those ships run on that fuel, right? And it's not cheap. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, David.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Well, I've been meaning to call about a couple of things, including the military, but I really want to follow up on Chris's call this morning regarding the councillors and taxes. I have that report that he talked about,
right?
Or the numbers he quoted. I've seen it, and it comes from two gentlemen. I think they work with or for the Coast, and they're very reputable. And the numbers he's talking about stick out like a snowbank in July for District 7 as far as the taxes that come from this district.
So, David, can I ask you a question, David?
Shoot.
Should a taxpayer in Lake Major, where they're not on water and sewer, and they're not, I know those are different services, but they don't have the same level of municipal services, pay the same tax rate as you do in District 7?
Don't think so.
Right.
And just a quickie before we go on, I know you've talked about this before, about the councillors. I've checked it out, by the way, and there is no recall for politicians in Nova Scotia. So we have these folks or councillors for the next 3 years. And I was really disappointed by their command of the King's English this morning as well. And, Gloria asked some pretty simple questions, and they didn't have the answers for $105,000 or $110,000 a year. They didn't have the answers. But you wonder what they're going through, and it's a difficult job, and I know through that. So you kind of wonder, what are their biggest issues? Is it taxes? Is it history? Is it corruption? Is it staffing? What's the biggest issues around the council table? And I think it's sustainability, and that's what this report brings out. I mean, there's a difference of $86 million for the peninsula, at least. And I think this brings back, and I know you don't want to hear it, I think this brings back the ghost of amalgamation. Before amalgamation, before John Savage.
I get it. I understand that. David also brings back the ghost of unfair taxation because of property caps.
We can talk about that. I mean, so a person who's bought a house.
Good for the goose is good for the gander, isn't it, though? We're asking people in rural areas to pay their share. Why isn't your neighbor paying as much tax as you are?
Well, my neighbor's been there for 5 years. I've been here for 40 years.
Okay, so then why aren't you paying as much tax as your neighbor is?
Because that's the way the system's built.
The system. Got
it. And the other thing about the system is the assessment system. Why is there a property on Gottingen Street, a 7,000 square foot property on Gottingen Street that hasn't been reassessed in I think it's either 10 or 12 years? Why is there a property on Coburg Road that is assessed for $2 million that's sold for $12 million? Why is there a property on Dutch Village Road that's sold for $5 million and is assessed for $1 million? Something's wrong with the system. It's not balanced. It's charging in some ways a cash grab for the peninsula. And I don't know if Chris said it, but we're kind of sick and tired. I mean, and the councillors wouldn't address that this morning. So I think the fear once they go into in camera at council is sustainability. And I will send you this report. And literally, like I said, it's either like a snowbank in July or the Himalayas. The revenue from the peninsula is way and above. And our good friend David Hensby and all those folks out there, sorry, you owe us, buddy. You owe us.
All right, David, appreciate it. I'm up against the break.
Man.
Have a good one.
Take care. Thanks.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Oh, there's a can of worms. We're back after the break. All right, to the email bag before we go back to the phones, and this one comes to us from Dan, and he says, is the price of oil not crashing today? I believe we're going to see a downward trend going forward now that the USA is talking to Iran about ending the war. I expect interrupter to decrease tonight and continue going forward. Address this off the top of the show, Dan, that oil prices are down significantly today. And, of course, like you, I will be watching very closely the Nova Scotia Energy Board. If we see the decreases happen as quickly as we saw the increases happen. But that being said, this is a 5-day respite from what I understand. The President of the United States this morning saying that he's extending his ultimatum. And then on the converse of that, and again, propaganda being what propaganda is, Iran says that there are no talks going on. So believe who you will in this quagmire of information these days. But anyway, you are correct, Dan. The prices are dropping significantly today. At last check, I think oil prices were down. Brent was down almost 10%. WTI down almost 9%. Gasoline down 8% at New York. So by the definition of the interrupter clause, I think the number is 6% is where they're supposed to use the interrupter. So only time will tell. Back to the phone lines. We say hello to Sandy. Sandy, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Nova Scotia Power. They seem to have fallen to the wayside lately. Nobody's complaining about them, so I'd kind of like to bring the spotlight back around to them there. I got my power bill recently, and I, like so many people over the last year, have kind of felt that their power bills were a little higher than normal. And when I found out that they were estimating a lot of bills, I said, all right, this is all going to come out in the wash. Once they get a proper reading of our meters, then maybe there will be a bit of a refund coming my way.
That's what they told us, yeah.
Well, I got my last power bill, and they've doubled down. Now, let me preface this by saying I put a heat pump in my garage last November, and it's been running there. But my bill this last month, or for the last 2 months, it says my usage has doubled over the same period last year. Now, granted, also, we've hit a rough winter this winter, and that heat pump's been running out there. But I called them to say, you know, what's going on? Why are my bills so high? And they just kind of brushed me off as if to say, no, your bills have all been accurate. You know, this is what your new usage is. And they're telling me that I used double the amount of energy in the last 2 months than I did over the same period last year. And when I told them I had a heat pump in the garage that I didn't have before, they said, well, there's the problem. I said, you're telling me that a new energy-efficient heat pump in my garage is going to use the same amount of power as my entire house did this time last year?
Well, it doesn't seem to make much sense.
No, it doesn't. But the thing is I'm kind of at a loss as to where to go to next, and I'm kind of hoping maybe somebody else out there might be in a similar situation and says, well, this is what you got to do. And I don't know what that is, but, you know, I'm already part of that class action lawsuit against Nova Scotia Power, and I don't know if that's going to bear any fruit or not. I haven't heard any talk of that in a while either. So.
Did it say on your bill that was a red meter, that the human eyes touched it?
They said that meter was red. They said my meter was red the last bill, which again was high, and they tried to tell me that I think they said that there was only one time over the last year where that my meter wasn't red, and that doesn't seem to track either.
No.
So again, I'm kind of at a loss as to where to turn next with this, you know, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in this boat.
Well, keep us in the loop, Sandy. All right.
Yeah, all right. You got no ideas, have you?
No, not off the top of my head, sir. Sorry. I wish.
Okay.
I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be making money doing something else. Anyway, I appreciate it.
Well,
Sandy.
maybe somebody else will hear this and they'll say, "Well, this is what I had to do." So
For sure.
that's kind of my hope with this.
Appreciate it, sir.
Okay.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Last word today goes to Jamie. Jamie, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Well, one thing that I've been listening to you for quite a while, and there's a couple things. There's one thing that you're saying that you got to be careful what you say unless you have the information.
Okay.
And I'll just make the 2 points, and then I can hang up. But here's the deal: the capped assessment rate. If they remove it, some people, seniors, will lose their homes. Number one. Number two, you talk about a good example earlier. 45 years. Well, the person that's been there 40 years is paying taxes for 40 years. The person that's been there for 5 years is paying taxes for 5 years. And if you look at the averages, most people don't stay in their homes for 40 years anymore because they can't afford to.
Jamie, can I ask you a question real quick before you hang up?
Go ahead.
Who says that seniors will lose their homes?
Oh, they will, because they're barely getting by now because of the price of everything, groceries, food, etc.
I get it.
It's logical. I don't have the actual facts.
How about the logic of this, Jamie? And I'm not trying to be smart here, but how about the logic of this is that if they take the artificial cap off of taxes, then the revenue pool is much larger. So could it be conceived that the tax rate would drop off substantially if everybody was paying the same amount?
Okay, theoretically you're correct, but that isn't going to happen. It's the same with groceries. When groceries go up, they go up. When they stop going up, they stop going up, but they don't go back in price.
Right, because that's
will never go
inflation.
back.
That's a different thing, right?
But
like
taxes will never go
if
back.
the revenue gets to a point, Jamie, that everybody's paying, and I'm going to put quotes around this, their fair share of taxes, then it's conceivable that the tax rate could go from 7.5% to like 1% or even 0%.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, that's logical. But we're talking about the government. I'm 65 years old, and they don't roll the taxes back.
Right.
They'll just spend it somewhere else.
Jamie, I appreciate the call, man. I do.
Thank you. Have
Cheers.
a good one.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I can't argue that point. Logic and government, it's like military and intelligence. And sorry if there's any intelligence operators out there. That's just the joke, right? I apologize. That's going to do it for the open hour, folks. I appreciate it. We're going to do this again tomorrow. It is, of course, regular rules, and I look forward to those conversations. We're going to stop. We're going to get an update on the news at noon. Show continues on the other side of it. We're going to figure out how much snow we got, what it looked like, and what the week ahead looks like when we sit down with our meteorologist. Allister Aalders will be your guest after the update. You're listening to The Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. The Monday edition of the show rolls along, and it has become almost a tradition here in Nova Scotia to deal with a Sunday into Monday storm, and it has happened yet again. So what did this storm bring? What was responsible for it, and what can we expect moving forward? One person I know that can answer all of those questions, and that's our meteorologist, and that's Allister Aalders, who joins me on the phone. Allister, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
I guess the first question is, this storm, when we were talking, it could be as much as 30 centimeters. Did it kind of live up to the hype?
I mean, I would maybe somewhat disagree with that. Some of the weather models, at the end of the week were showing the potential for a more significant system. But as we talked about on Friday, there was quite a bit of uncertainty with it. This system had two components really coming together. One, somewhat of a weak Clipper-like system that was moving from the Great Lakes in towards the Gulf of Maine, and then within kind of that broad trough of low pressure, a second system that would develop and track off the Atlantic coast, which is happening now and will continue for the afternoon. So essentially what we did see is a trend farther south in the system, a bit farther offshore. There are some high rates of snowfall with this system, but for the most part offshore, and the system strengthening perhaps a bit later than what some of the guidance was showing late last week, whereas Newfoundland is expecting a significant weather system, a significant weather event. Some may see 30, 40 or more centimeters tonight through Tuesday, because the system will be, strengthening quite quickly as it approaches and crosses eastern Newfoundland with some very high snowfall rates overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. So essentially what we're seeing is, the two components just coming together a bit slower and a bit weaker as it passes offshore. But it's late March now, or getting towards late March, and I think any amount of snow, most people are not very happy about. So I hope everyone kept their shovels and snow brushes handy, because they were certainly needed, at least the brushes this morning.
I can tell you my shoulders weren't happy with the snow brush this morning. Anyway, Allister, what is the preliminary data on this? How much did we get?
So most of the metro area did receive close to 10 centimeters of snow overnight, looking at, the volunteer observers in the Coca-Roz network, which is always such a great benefit with these systems. The general range was about 8 to 12, 13 centimeters. On the peninsula, it was about 9 to 10. So in general, most areas received 10. Out at the airport, I believe unofficially the number there was 10 centimeters. So 10 was kind of the number of choice for most of HRM. Obviously, we've been into some lighter snow and even a bit of a break now with this system as the second component comes together. So we're expecting a bit more snow as we go through the afternoon during the drive home. That could be another 5 to possibly upwards of 10 centimeters. I would say the better opportunities for the higher end of that scale would be closer to the Atlantic coast, where we do have those steadier bands of snow expected to move through. But overall, it looks like 5 for some, 5 to 10 as we go through the afternoon, and then tapering off this evening. But some flurries expected to develop behind the system through the evening and overnight. That could bring a few more centimeters overnight before it finally clears off into and through the first part of Tuesday morning.
There was some gusty winds out there early this morning, Allister, blowing some of that snow around. Did that factor into some of the amounts I'm hearing from different people that were a little bit more than 10 centimeters?
I mean, certainly, this temperatures were a bit cooler, through the overnight. So we did have a bit of blowing snow. Obviously this has been somewhat of a wetter snow rather than, super fluffy. Temperatures are not far enough below freezing that it's very fluffy to really blow it around. But, certainly the winds, they have been gusty at times, since the system moved in last night and through the overnight hours, leading to some blowing snow. So obviously when we do have winds that are, even just moderately gusty, we certainly do see areas where there's some blowing and drifting. So that obviously does have an impact on the snowfall amounts that do accumulate. Obviously, with the the volunteer observers that I just touched on, they try to put their observations in sheltered areas where it's less prone to blowing and drifting if possible. And some have, snow cones that try to catch some of it. So there's some different methods to try to get more accurate measurements, but obviously, there's always some form of variability for the most part, unless the winds are incredibly calm with these systems.
The more important question, Allister, do I have to shovel it, or is Mother Nature going to take care of that?
Well, so I guess there's two answers. I mean, you could let Mother Nature handle it somewhat. The additional 5 to maybe 10 we do receive likely does stick around, though, tonight and into Tuesday, because temperatures will be below freezing tonight, -4, and then we only reach a high near 0 tomorrow. But, I mean, even with the temperature at or below freezing, at this time of year, we're going to have some sunshine coming out later tomorrow morning and afternoon. The higher sun angle really does help at this time of year. Even on a day like today, where we've had the snow, the roads are a bit warmer. So I know they were a bit, greasy in spots this morning. But, that even though it's overcast, that higher sun angle does benefit us at this time of year to give us some of that energy that we need to do some melting. So I think we will see some of it sticking around. But if you really want to try to hold off, Wednesday we climb to 4 degrees in the afternoon. So I think we'll see more melting on that day. You could probably get away with just driving over it, but I know some people like to get it cleared out of the way, especially where, they don't want things to freeze up. So you might be able to get away with it. But, if you want to try to get one last shovel in, hopefully, for the season, you could clear away what we get this afternoon for sure.
One last shovel, Allister. Are you saying this is it?
Well, I can't say with 100% certainty, but I mean, I certainly hope so. The next system coming in is mainly going to be a rain system. Now, I should mention there's a weak trough Wednesday morning that will bring some flurries or a very brief period of some light snow during the commute. That could bring a centimeter or two Wednesday morning. But we have another system coming in Thursday with periods of rain showers, and that rain looks to linger for Friday. So temperatures will be above the freezing mark, and this will be a wet, at times windy system, could be 20 to 30 or 40 millimeters of rain. Temperatures, though, will be cooling back down. We're not quite done with at least winter-like temperatures, with daytime highs that will likely struggle to reach the freezing mark as we go through the upcoming weekend, and overnight lows that are going to be down into the minus double digits. The normal high or the normal low for this time of year, -4, and we're talking about overnight lows that could be down to perhaps near -14 in parts of HRM this weekend. So We know that despite it being spring, the switch just doesn't flip it all over. It's a gradual transition, so we will be dealing with, more hints of winter for the next couple of weeks. It looks like temperatures will be fluctuating, but at times certainly a cooler pattern. But we will hope that maybe this is the last, system of significance or impact for the season, and perhaps we can head into a more traditional spring-like pattern in the week or so ahead.
We'll hold you to it.
Of course, I wouldn't expect anything less.
That is our meteorologist, Allister Aalders, keeping his eye on the weather. You can hear him each and every weekday in the morning and afternoon drives, and occasionally here on the program. Allister, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dan. Have a good one.
All right, we're going to take a break. Last week I was talking a little bit about size of government, and that Nova Scotia by far has the largest impact on the economy from government spending and public service work. We're going to dig a little bit more into this study. It's called The Size of Government in Canada in 2024. It's put out by the Fraser Institute, a conversation with the Director of Fiscal Studies at the Fraser Institute, Jake Fuss, after the break. The Fraser Institute last week is designed to measure the size of government in Canada and also by province based on total government spending as a share of the economy, as well as public sector employment as a share of total employment between 2007 and 24. Now, the research showed the size of government relative to the economy has an effect on economic growth and social progress. And in 2024, the size of government relative to the economy among the provinces ranged from a high of 61.2%, that's right here in Nova Scotia, to a low of 30.4% in Alberta. In Canada as a whole, the size of government represents 43.6% of the economy. Very pleased to welcome to the show to tell us a little bit more on this, the Director of Fiscal Studies at the Fraser Institute. That's Jake Fuss. Jake, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
So when I started talking about this last week and I said the size of government, everybody kind of immediately assumed that we have too many politicians. And that's a factor in this, but this really works on government spending in relation to how much stuff we make in the province and the country, right?
Yes, exactly. So when we're talking about the size of government here, yes, it includes the number of bureaucrats or politicians that you have in the economy, but it's ultimately looking at the level of spending compared to the size of GDP or the overall amount in the economy that we produce each year. So we're tracking the numbers by province at both the provincial, municipal, and federal levels combined in each of these 10 provinces.
So it's all forms of government.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So it's all three levels of government. So it's not just the provincial amount of spending that's being done in Nova Scotia, for instance. We would also include, the amounts of federal public sector employment in Nova Scotia, as well as municipal employment and other aspects of government spending in that sector too.
61.2% for Nova Scotia. That's tops in the country.
Yes, I mean, it's really a trend that we're seeing right across Atlantic Canada. I mean, the three largest sizes of governments are in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and then Prince Edward Island as well. So they're all hovering around that 60% size of the economy in terms of government spending. If we use a comparison, places like Alberta or British Columbia are generally half that rate or a little over half that rate. So there is a very sizable government that we're seeing right now in the maritime provinces in particular. And ultimately, that can impose negative effects on the economy because it can actually lower rates of economic growth once you exceed thresholds like 30% of the economy in terms of government spending. So at a certain point, you actually get diminishing returns, and it can actually even hinder your economy by approaching those levels of government.
Jake, is that an indication that in Atlantic Canada, and of course by extension here in Nova Scotia, that our governments are too big, or is it that our GDP is too small, or is it a combination of both?
Well, I think it's certainly, a combination of both. When we look, generally speaking, we see a lower size of the private sector in many of the maritime provinces compared to the rest of the country. And at the same time, you also have significantly bigger sizes of government, which is compounding the issue then as well, because we ultimately know the optimal point to maximize economic growth and social progress is generally having a size of government between about 26 and 30% of the economy. When you're at double that rate, you're essentially just hindering yourselves in terms of actually getting that progress and getting that economic growth, which is ultimately critical to improving living standards for Nova Scotians and other Atlantic Canadians. So once you're kind of at these levels of 61% in terms of government spending, you're really not doing yourself any favors.
The federal government doesn't even fit in that. They're at 43.6%, and I will suggest, if my crystal ball, that number is going to go up because of all this defense spending that's on the horizon.
Well, it's certainly been going up for quite some time. I mean, particularly over the last decade, we've seen federal spending reach record highs pretty consistently, even before COVID and then coming out of COVID as well. So we have seen, but this is not just something that's unique to the federal government either. We're also seeing the same trends at the provincial levels, at the local levels of government as well, and it's happening right across the country. It's essentially increased in spending over the last 5 years, in particular in every single province across the country. So even though there are some provinces that have larger sizes of governments compared to others, all of them are essentially increasing spending at a very rapid pace currently.
Something we can control at all levels of government is the number of people that work in the public sector, and Nova Scotia rates very high in that, with 26.6% of the employment being that of government.
Yes, it's a very high rate, especially compared to other provinces. If you look at British Columbia or Alberta, they're hovering around that 20% mark. So it is significantly higher in Nova Scotia in terms of public sector employment. And you also look at, other Atlantic provinces like Newfoundland or Prince Edward Island, they're close to 30% of all employment being in the public sector as well. And ultimately, that has important implications. Public sector employees are ultimately paid by tax dollars, so your costs are ultimately rising. And if you have fewer people in proportionate actually employed in the private sector, then you have less tax money that's actually generating the money to pay for that public sector as well. So it really creates a couple of issues there. And ultimately, we've seen the growing size of public sector employment in Nova Scotia and many of these other provinces over the last decade and a half, in particular, where the numbers are shooting up at a very rapid pace.
Jake, what can governments do, particularly here in Nova Scotia, to get closer to that 30% range? Is this eliminating jobs? Is this eliminating spending? Is it eliminating both, or is it increasing GDP?
I think it's a combination of both in terms of controlling the size of government. You have to rein in spending and be a lot more responsible with spending. The dollar value of healthcare spending is not the indicator of how well your healthcare sector is actually performing. It's generally the other performance metrics, like how many doctors you have, how many beds you have available, how many MRI machines you have available. So it's actually about the wait times as well associated with the industry. So I think that should be a shift in the mindset in terms of performance rather than the dollar values that you're spending. And at the same time, you also have to improve economic growth. So that means looking at your tax system, looking at your regulatory system. Are there ways that we can get more projects done? Can we actually improve, the private sector and get more job creation there and more investments into our economy as well? That's going to improve tangible results for people by getting higher living standards for Nova Scotians. And that's ultimately what the provincial, federal, and municipal governments should be looking at.
Jake, appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks very much for having me on.
That is from the Fraser Institute. Jake Fuss, size of government in Nova Scotia, the highest in the country by a long shot, at just over 60% of the economy is spent with government dollars, which I think we'll see increased substantially as we see these defense contracts come to fruition. The mayor, the premier, and many out there in the business community are eagerly awaiting announcements on things like submarine repair facilities or maintenance facilities, and upgrades to our military infrastructure as part of Canada's commitment to NATO at 5%, 2% to start. But I think that's more government money that's coming in. Not suggesting that that's a bad thing. It's going to certainly spur on the economy. But if we rely on one source for 61, 62, 63% of our economy, What happens when governments change? Could be scary times. The Premier's already been raising GDP numbers. We know we have some of the lowest, if not the lowest, GDP in, 51 different jurisdictions in North America. And that's part of his sales pitch for big projects like Wind West and some of the exploration of resources that the Premier's been talking about as a way to diversify the economy. Time for us to take another break. Going to get an update on the news. On the other side of it, a conversation with CUPE 3912. As I understand it, the striking staff at NSCAD University are heading back to work after voting for arbitration. A conversation with the president of the union representing those workers, Lauren McKenzie, after the update. All right, welcome back as we roll along here on a Monday afternoon. During the break, just took a quick peek before we get to our next guest, a quick peek at the energy prices. WTI now down 12%, Brent down 13%, gas in New York down 10.5%. So Nova Scotia Energy Board, I'm looking at you. We're well into the 6% swing in market conditions. I'm expecting to see something movement on prices very shortly. We'll keep you up to date if anything changes between now and tomorrow. We talked about this on the day that it happened, and workers at NSCAD University hit the picket lines, and now we hear that those same striking workers, represented by CUPE, are going back to work after voting for arbitration. Pleased to welcome back to the show the president of CUPE 3912. That's Lauren McKenzie. Lauren, how are you?
Hi, Dan. I'm great. How are you?
I am well. So the next step in this process, it appears that the picket lines are coming down.
Yeah, we have. We've gone back to work today. Members are back at what they love to do, and even though we do love picketing, I think you and your listeners know that at this point.
For sure.
We've learned to love it. But yeah, members are back to work today. They voted for a process called first contract arbitration, and they did so on Friday.
Right. So do we have a date for that yet?
No, we don't. We have an arbitrator, and we have agreement by both parties to enter into the process. We have, democratically decided by our members that they want to enter into first contract arbitration. Generally, labor, Dan, we try to avoid government interference and free collective bargaining, right? Mm-hmm. Because when government interferes with labor, workers don't win. So we really do try to, I don't want to say force, but compel the employer to meet us and bargain with us at the table. That's when workers get the best deal. And we had to really examine the realities of our situation here in order to go into this process and put that to members and explain to members what the pros and cons were, and it's ultimately up to them.
Lauren, I know you can't sort of let us know the details of those discussions as the arbitration process is still ongoing, but the concern or always the worry, I think, with these kind of processes when we go to binding arbitration is that once the arbitrator speaks, that's it. Either the employees or the union members win, or the employer, in this case the school, win, and usually somebody's left with sour grapes.
Yeah. Exactly. So the thing, Dan, here, though, is that there was so much distance between the parties. We had told, I told you in our last chat that members hadn't had a raise since 1984. Right. And so when we're talking about NSCAD really having to re-examine, I think from the ground up, how they treat workers and how they compensate their labor. There was so much distance between the two parties. We kept moving, and the employer kept refusing to move. And that's bargain against ourselves, right? That is not in our members' best interest. So really, ultimately, through our strike, we made a bit of progress, but we were really essentially getting nowhere on those critical pieces of wages and job security. And the most important thing for these folks who've been bargaining since 2023 is to have an agreement and to have finally some certainty in their lives. So, first contract arbitration was put in place in Nova Scotia for precisely this kind of situation. So looking at our members and their situation, very specifically those NSCAD folks, they had everything to lose. They certified in 2003. They're still without a contract. The unwillingness of the employer, and also that the arbitrator will look at similar collective agreements, right? They'll look at the sector, they'll look at post-secondary, they'll look at contracts for workers who do similar work. And we feel that our members are in a really good position as a result of that. Because NSCAD's looking at 1984, but an arbitrator lives today in 2026.
Right.
And we feel that our members will, as a result, get, a 2026 deal.
Will the arbitrator rule on the length of this contract, or do we know that?
Yeah, we do know that. So this process specifically grants a 1-year collective agreement.
Right.
So we get a collective agreement, it's on the books, and then we use that as a platform for our future bargaining.
Right. So if and again, we're crystal balling because we don't know what the arbitrator is going to say. But if the union members and yourselves are not happy with what the ruling is, then the process begins to renegotiate that for the next go around.
Whether we're happy or not, we start to renegotiate. Right. Yeah. But we're in top shape as it comes to negotiating collective agreements, and that we have a bit of a break with our other groups. We have collective agreements going through 2027 at Dell, 2028 with the other units. We're ready to go. And we're, there's, like I say, there's no rest for the wicked, and so there's no rest for us either.
Lauren, your members were on the picket lines there for several days. What was their morale like? Are they behind the process, or are they just looking to get this done and behind them?
Our members are, I think right now, they're really cohesive.
Right.
They're, I'm not sure if you had any reports from the picket line, but, art and activism go incredibly well together.
Mm-hmm.
And that picket line and the strike was just such a great coming together of community and of members. And, we had so much activity as well at the legislature with various protests that coincided and dovetailed so well with what's going on with our members. So our members are, they're still energetic. They're still full of it, and they're really ready to, return to what they love, but to do that with the dignity of a decent collective agreement. Like, we're really, there's a lot of wind in our sails.
Lauren, keep us up to date, okay?
I will. Thanks, Dan.
That's Lauren McKenzie, the president of CUPE 3912. Staff that were on strike at NSCAD are back on the job today after voting on Friday to go to first contract arbitration, which will lay out a 1-year deal and will be the final say, at least in this stage of negotiation. We'll get them a deal, and then, as Lauren said, will be the sort of starting grounds for the next round of negotiations, which will happen very shortly, considering that contract is only good for 12 months. Time for us to take another break. When we come back, the regular season now behind the Halifax Mooseheads. In front of them, the playoffs. A conversation with our play-by-play announcer, the best in the queue. That's Garreth MacDonald, right after the break. The second season is about to get underway. The Halifax Mooseheads wrapping up their regular season campaign on the weekend with a visit across to the Rock to face the Newfoundland Regiment, heading into that weekend series on a bit of a upswing with a couple of victories and some overtime wins and points, and got to Newfoundland and got into St. John's, and well, the regiment brought them back to earth, shall I say. Very pleased to welcome back to the show to set up the playoffs for us this year our friend, the best in the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League. My opinion, of course. And that's Garreth MacDonald. How are you, sir?
Wonderful, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, sir. A tough weekend for the Moose to end the regular season.
Yeah, not ideal. Not ideal. They had been heading into that game on Friday night. That was the longest win streak of the year. They had strung together 4 wins for the first time, and a couple of wins earlier in the month against Cape Breton, and 2 more the next weekend against St. John. So, yeah, I mean, coming into St. John's, I think flying pretty high, feeling good, and I think they got off to a pretty good start on Friday night. I think they were out shooting the regiment 7-8 nothing, and they had a power play opportunity early on. They drew an early man advantage, couldn't convert on that, and the first shot of the game they give up is a breakaway, which is never an ideal way to start. So Ben Vitch, St. John's rookie, he scores early, and Newfoundland never really looks back. And on Friday night, they kind of controlled throughout. And I think the next day, it was the final game of the season. For the most part, the Moose, their playoff spot at that point had been solidified. They were going to finish 7th. They knew that. So not a ton of implications on the line with the result of the game, but still you want to finish the year on a winning note. And I thought they had a real good start once again. The first 40 minutes were great. There were lots of real nice storylines. Sambro, their overager, playing in his final regular season game. He scored his first Q hat trick, had his first 4-point game. Sean Carrier on his line. Matched a career high in points with 4. Danny Walters had a couple of assists, his first multi-assist game in the queue. And again, things were looking pretty good heading into the third period. 3-goal lead. They're up 4-1, and a little bit of pushback there from Newfoundland. They rattle off 5 unanswered at a late empty netter. It was tough way to finish. And again, not ideal, but you hope there could potentially be a few positives to take, maybe from the first 40 at least.
So we know that the Mooseheads will be playing the Sags in the first round of the playoffs after coming in the 7th seed of the Eastern Conference. Tell me a little bit about this matchup that I think starts Friday night on the road in Chicoutimi, right?
Yeah, it does start on Friday night, and yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a tough one for sure. I mean, you look at this Chicoutimi team, all the moves they made during the trade period. I mean, they really loaded up, and I mean, if you look at their last 10 games here heading into the playoffs, they went 9-1, outscored their opponents 75-17. So yeah, it's going to be a tough test for sure. Herculean for the Moose. I mean, you look at the Chicoutimi lineup right now. They've got the Q's leading scorer in Maxime Massé, the Anaheim Ducks prospect. He's a threat whenever he's on the ice. But I think when you really look at that forward group, the top 9, they've got 3 lines that can score. I mean, the 4th line as well. Veteran Christophe Berthelot. I mean, he can put the puck in the net. We've seen that during the season series. I think there's 8 20-goal scorers in the lineup for Chicoutimi. I talked about some of the moves that they made during the trade period. They brought in maybe the best goalie in the queue in Ottawa Senators prospect Lucas Beckman, who I think since being acquired by the Saguenay, he's 13-1. He's got a .940 save percentage, a 152 goals against average. So he's been just phenomenal. But I think they're probably the real strength of the team. And again, there's a lot of strengths referenced so far, but it's the blue line. They acquired 3 captains during the trade period: Thomas Lavoie from Cape Breton, Alexis Bernier from Baie-Comeau, and Shawinigan's Jordan Tourney. And these guys, they join a D-corps that already had Alex Wong back there, a defenseman, Nashville Predators prospect. He was the 2nd leading scorer this year in the queue with 70 points. But Tourney now, he's 6th, Lavoie's 8th. They've got Peter Asbulins as well. I think he was top 15 in scoring. So there's just so much depth throughout this Chicoutimi lineup that, for a young Mooseheads team that's still kind of early on here in the rebuild, it's going to be a tough test for them for sure. But you got a lot of guys returning as well from a team that last year kind of shocked the league, shocked a lot of folks who follow junior hockey as they were able to become the first 16 seed in Q history to win their first round playoff matchup when they knocked off the Drummondville Voltigeurs in 7 games. So nothing's impossible, but it's going to be it'll be a stiff test for sure in round 1.
And that's not made easier by the suspension of Owen Brisson, their goaltender.
No, that is certainly not helpful. That was, I think, some news that had a lot of the fan base, I think, pretty fired up, and I think caught quite a few people by surprise. That all stemmed from a fight in St. John back. I guess it was the second last weekend of the season, that first game and that last St. John doubleheader. He dropped the blocker and the glove with Arseny Radkov, a very rare goalie fight, first goalie fight that I can recall. And it certainly had TD Station, a building that I think over the last few years has maybe been a little quiet there as they've been trying to battle their way back. But he certainly had the fan base there pretty fired up. TD Station was loud, but things were pretty disappointing the next day when everyone learned that there was an automatic 5-game suspension associated with the goalie fight. So they will be without him for games 1 and 2 of this series. He's their starter, so that is again not an ideal way to begin the series, but big opportunity here for Nick Circa to try to weather the storm and show what he's all about.
Eastern Conference obviously is where most of our attention will be paid, and that number 1 seed taking on St. John, the Battle of New Brunswick, will be the highlight for some of the playoffs.
Yeah, that's going to be a great matchup for sure. All New Brunswick matchup. I mean, this Moncton Wildcats team, it's been pretty impressive. I think we talked before about what Taylor McDougall has done here, kind of reloading on the fly for a team that's coached by his father Gardner, who's again he's done a phenomenal job here. This team won the Jill Gorteau Trophy last year, and just so much talent brought in through free agency and trades, as well as the Q draft. It's been an impressive way to rebuild on the fly. And I mean, I think if you compare this roster to the group last year, this one might even have more depth though. So I think St. John, like the Moose, they're going to be in a tough spot there, going up against one of the best team in the Q in the Moncton Wildcats.
Cape Breton also in the playoffs, and they have the task of Quebec in the first round.
Yeah, Cape Breton, with the Quebec Ramparts. I think that should be, a pretty interesting matchup. Quebec kind of like in the same spot right now, I guess, where the Mooseheads are, you might say. I mean, these two teams.
Garrett, I was misleading you. They're playing the regiment. That was my bad.
You are misleading me. See? Yes, it's Charlottetown in Quebec. I'm looking at the stats right. Okay, no. So yes, I mean, I guess
Newfoundland. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I will say Charlottetown and Quebec's going to be a pretty good series as well, 4 and 5, because again, I'd say a lot of good young talent in the Quebec lineup, but Charlottetown over the last month and a half, they've been one of probably the best team, right there with some of the top teams in the queue, right there with the Monktons and the Chicoutimis in terms of what they've been doing here as of late. But yeah, Cape Breton and Newfoundland, that will be a good series. I mean, we just saw though what I think Cape Breton over the last few weeks, they've kind of faltered a bit, whereas Newfoundland, we know how potent they are. Their power play pretty impressive. They've gotten a lot of great production this year from their captain Justin LaRose. He's having a phenomenal overage season. But Dawson Sharkey, Louis Francois Belanger, and some great goaltending as well from Louis Antoine Deneau. That will be that'll be a tough matchup for the Eagles for sure in round 1.
Halifax Mooseheads Chicoutimi begins Friday night at the George Vesna Center in Chicoutimi for games 1 and 2 Friday, Saturday. They return home on March 31st for 3, so it's a 2-3-2. And that, of course, at Scotiabank Center, and we know that Scotiabank Center will be loud for those playoff games. Gareth, I appreciate you spending some time with us today, and I'm sure we'll be chatting through the playoffs.
Look forward to it, Dan. Great to chat with you as always.
That is Garreth MacDonald. I think he is the best in the queue. And you can hear his call right here on 95.7 News Radio for all of your playoff action. Now, there's going to be some questions asked, and I'm going to address it right now, that, of course, the Halifax Mooseheads will be playing on Friday night as the Toronto Blue Jays kick off their home opener. And we are contractually obligated to carry the Halifax Moose contest on our station. So we will do that. So Friday, Saturday, we'll have Mooseheads. Our first Blue Jays game of the season will be happening on Sunday. So just keep that all in mind, as we will be broadcasting a ton of Blue Jays games this season. But Friday night and Saturday night, because it is Mooseheads playoffs, we will be taking the Mooseheads game here on the radio station. My thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for all the hard work that she does each and every day, to all of our guests for joining the show and imparting their knowledge. Hope you learned something. I certainly did. And to all of you who dialed the numbers and joined the conversation, I truly appreciate it. Looks like the snow is going to let up later on, folks. It might still be a little slick out there. Be careful. Remember, be well, and it's important to be kind to one another.